Thank everybody for coming today, giving up of your most valuable resource, your time. If it's any one thing that I want to try and get you guys to understand, any one thing that you would leave here with is that as a society, we're releasing men and women into crisis situations. And what I mean by that is that, let's say someone leaves prison. Let's say someone leaves Wasco, about the middle of the state. They leave there with $200. They drop them off at the bus ticket, or the bus stop. The bus is probably about $71 to wherever they're going. They stop and get a Happy Meal, and maybe a pair of shoes. And by the time they get to where they're going, they probably have less than $100 in their pocket. So they're in a crisis situation. It's kind of the hierarchy, the food, shelter, clothing type of thing. So they have $100 worth of time to do something with. If they're leaving the county jail, it may be even worse. They may have been arrested in August, and they may be leaving there in mid-January. So they may have been arrested in a pair of shorts and a tank top. And then when they leave there, it's probably without a dime in their pocket. So if it's any one thing that I would ask you just to get a lock on is that, that we're releasing men and women into crisis situations. So with that, I'm going to ask the sheriff to come up. He's going to address you guys. And as he works his way up, I just want to say it was an honor to be able to sit in his office and just be able to talk about the things that are going on in our community. So with that, I'm going to ask him to come on up and just share about AB 109.
Randy came into my office, and obviously he has a vision for in his heart of where he's going, and I appreciate that. But one of the things he talked to me is what he started talking about here is the inmate population, the recidivism rate for inmates, and what he envisions for the community and the faith-based organizations that they can do to help reduce that. And the reason why that is more important now than ever is because of legislation and law from last year called AB 109. How many here has heard of AB 109 and realignment? AB 109, in my opinion, this is my opinion, and many other sheriffs throughout the state, is the worst piece of legislation since Proposition 215 and the way it was written back in 1996. AB 109 fundamentally changes the way we as a state deal with convicted misdemeanors and felons now at a local level since the state was formed. It's all new now. Since October 1st of last year, if you are a non-serious, non-violent, non-sex felon that you were convicted of that, from any of those crimes, you no longer go to state prison. You spend your time in the local jail. Up until a few months ago, we had a 7-year sentence to our county jail. Was it 2 months ago? 11 years? 11 years to our county jail. Again, back on the history. AB 109 was a knee-jerk reaction to a three-judge panel that said California state prison system was overpopulated and quote-unquote inhumane. And they ordered that the prison population in the state of California, CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, reduce their population by somewhere around between 30 and 40,000 over the next couple years. The governor, along with CDCR, came up with this idea of realignment. We'll shift this population back to the locals. Now, it didn't end up being the rumor that was going around that they're just going to kick people loose. This is all done through attrition. As their parole date comes up, as their time comes up, that they're able to walk out those doors, they walk out those doors. And the reduction of the population in that the courts are now no longer sentencing those felons to state prison. Now they're sentencing them to the local jails. Along with that, the governor proposed, I call it sugar. He wanted it to taste not so bad to us local counties, so they threw some money behind it, which is about 25 cents on the dollar what it costs the state to do the same job. I do agree with him in that the state, the counties, the local governments can handle this issue, I think, better, more efficiently, more effectively than the state, because here in El Dorado County, we're doing it right now. To give you kind of an idea of how ill-conceived AB 109 was, I sat in on a conference call. AB 109 started on a Saturday, on October 1st. It was a Saturday. I sat in on a conference call on the previous Thursday. This is 2 days before AB 109 went into effect. During that conference call, there were all kinds of questions and all kinds of concerns being thrown around. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I started keeping notes. 4 out of 5 questions asked of the state 2 days before AB 109 went into effect, the state had no answer for. They had to, the response was, we don't know, we'll have to get back to you. Or we don't know, that's one of those things, we're going to have to see how it works. What we did in El Dorado County was we immediately looked at what funding we thought we were going to get, which we ultimately ended up receiving. The first year was $1.6 million prorated for 9 months, so it was $1.2 million. This year we received just over $3.3 million from the state. In the law, it set up what's called the Community Corrections, the CCP, the Community Corrections Partnership Council. And it is by law a group of individuals, the sheriff, the DA, probation, the courts, everybody else that comes to the table to determine what's the best way to deal with this issue, to deal with this population that we're going to be receiving, keeping in mind main target is reduce recidivism, because we can't fill our jails up. We immediately formed that group. The chief probation officer by statute is the chairman of that group. And I can tell you folks, it's worked fantastic. We have a great program going. We're doing good things with the money. We come up with the plan, the Board of Supervisors approves it, and then we implement it. One of the things that we're really focusing on is quote unquote evidence-based practices. And that was part of one of the driving forces for AB 109. They wanted to really get into this type of practice. And that was, in the past, when you had, say, 10 inmates, and you put them all up against a wall, we just threw a bunch of money at them and said, hopefully we can save one of these from recidivating. We can stop one of these from reoffending and not end up back. Obviously, we all know the days of throwing money at a problem are over. So through evidence-based practices, what we're doing, and what should have been done a long time ago, and actually to an extent was done, but now we're very much improving upon it, is we're putting those 10 inmates on the wall and we're saying, okay, you know what? Your history, your crimes, everything, you're not a candidate. You're not a candidate, but you look promising. You're not a candidate. This one's going to work. If we focus on this inmate, it's going to work. So we use those evidence-based practices to identify those inmates and focus our resources there with alternative sentencing, with training, with anything else we can do. So long-term, what is AB 109 going to mean? There's jails all over this county, all over this state that are full. They didn't have room to begin with. And now they're getting hit with this new population of longer-term sentences, more sophisticated prisoners. It's a whole new ballgame. We're all dealing with medical costs. Before you had a maximum of a year sentence, you put them on a maintenance program for medical issues, because in a year they were down the road. Now we have these long-term sentences, we're dealing with all those costs. So we're dealing with that. Down the road, long-term is what's going to kill these counties, because the cumulative effect of these long-term sentences are what is going to bankrupt and blow these jails at the seams. Now, in El Dorado County, we are blessed, and I use that word very sincerely because we have room at the inn. We have beds open. As of Monday morning, we had 114 beds. Every week I get a report at staff meeting as to what our custody level is. And we're bouncing around anywhere from 100 to 120, 130. open beds. We just signed, the Board of Supervisors just approved a contract with the County of Shasta where we're selling jail beds. We just approved a contract with them that could bring in as much as $328,000 a year. We're looking at a contract with Amador County. Keep in mind, all these jails are full. They don't have room. They need some place to put them. They're going to use their AB 109 funds to help pay for contracting with beds with the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. But in the long run, folks, this is not going to work. This is not a good thing for California. Not the way it's set up. I'm not saying that realignment won't work or realignment can't work. I'm just saying that the way that it is set up currently right now is it's doomed to fail in the long run because of the current capacities of the jails. And that takes me back to Randy and why I'm here, is because anything that you folks can do, anything you can do to help with these men and women that are incarcerated and on the way out the door and out the door, to help keep them out of my facility, out of El Dorado County Jail, or out of any jail for that matter, it's not only the right thing to do in my heart, in my mind, in my heart, but also the way this country is going and the direction this country is going. You know, it used to be a community took care of themselves. A community raised a child. The village raised a child. The churches were all part of that. We've gotten away from that as a society. And the way that this country is going, both with the deficit, and I don't have to sit up here and preach politics and deficits and budgets and all that other stuff, but I'm telling you, we got to get back to that belief. We got to start taking care of our own. We got to start making it work if we're going to survive, because there's going to come a day, hopefully, I say hopefully sooner than later, because I don't want my kids to have to go through it or my grandkids. I want to deal with it now. There's going to come a day when we're going to be leaning on one another more than ever. So thank you for allowing me the time to come up here and speak with you. I appreciate it. I apologize for getting here a little bit late, and I apologize for having to leave. But I got to get to another, or back to what I was at. Do I have time to take a couple questions, if they have a couple?
Sure, yeah.
Is there any, just a couple questions, if anybody has any? Yes, sir.
Sure. What do you attribute the empty beds?
I attribute the biggest part, well, two reasons. One is, right now, at this time in history, for the last few months, crime is through the floor in El Dorado County. And I say that very carefully, and I always knock on wood when I say it, because this is truly an anomaly. It is that low. That's how low it is. I'm waiting for the spike to make up for this low. That's number one. Number two, our judges have really been working hard leading up to realignment. And since realignment came in effect October 1st of last year, and how they are crafting their sentences, on using the different sentencing guidelines to utilize other alternative sentences, work program, day reporting. We're getting that started with probation. Whatever else they can do within reason to keep them from filling up those beds and leave us with that cushion. Because, I mean, it could be, I mean, today we have beds and we're setting up all these neat contracts to bring some revenue into the county. That's today. All the contracts are read as available. Because so as soon as our population starts to increase because of those long-term sentences, then those contracts will eventually go away. That funding stream will be gone. Yes, sir.
You're talking about realignment. So how do the new programs relate to like Prop 36? Going to be expansion of Prop 36?
No, as far as you mean the evidence-based practices and those type of things, Prop 36 is completely different. It's another alternative type program. Yeah, that was another alternative type program. AB 109 doesn't affect any of that, other than saying that now these crimes, you no longer spend time in state prison. Now you are spending your time in El Dorado County Jail. And you know, believe it or not, I don't know, and Mr. Jamon here can speak maybe further on it, I'm not sure. But the numbers, we see a lot more in our jail than going to prison because of those non-nons, the classification of the non-sex, non-violent, non-serious felons. I mean, when I mention a number like 11 years to the El Dorado County Jail, an 11-year sentence in our county jail, who would have ever thought that since the state was formed in 1850 that the counties would be sitting on 11-year sentences? We're not set up for that. We weren't designed for that. And we weren't designed for, we've never had the experience of, in the prison, in CDCR, ACLUs up there behind every day, because that's where the cases are. That's where the money is. That's where they can get their attorneys in and they can file all those cool lawsuits against the state of California and all those neat settlements and win all those cases. That's why we end up with all the restrictions in Title 15 and Title 24. Title 15 is the law that tells us how we have to keep and care of our prisoners. Title 24 tells us what the facilities have to be built like and what everything else we have to have for them. That's how we came up with all this stuff, was because of California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Now, I can guarantee you, because it's already happening in the larger cities, LA, or larger counties, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, all the other big counties, all those organizations, the prisoners' rights unions and all those other things, they are now, instead of walking the halls and the yards of CDCR, now they're walking the halls and the yards of the local jails to find those issues and find those things that they can hit us up on. That's just the way it is. So with that, folks, again, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it. Anything that you guys can do is awesome. Thank you. Randy, thank you.
Thank you for coming. So with that, I'll ask my longtime friend Wilbur to come on up. He's going to share a testimony on what it's like to get into a crisis situation. Oh, do you want the stool?
Right, the long and the short of it, huh? I'm going to give you just a real quick background so you know that where I'm coming from. Most of you know me, so I don't have to do too much. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was, and I thank God for that. So, at the age of 3, I was in group homes and foster homes because my parents were alcohol and drug abusers. At the age of 9, I was in juvenile hall. At the age of 13, I was in California Youth Authority. At the age of 18, I was in prison. County born, state raised. I did 16 years in prison, about 7 years in the hole. First time I paroled out of Corcoran Shoe. That was in 1989. It was probably the worst prison CDC had at the time. A lot of violence, a lot of just horrible things going on there. And when I paroled, you get $200 gate money. I was in Corcoran, and so I had to take a train or a bus